Shalom and welcome to this week's Living Torah. Pray you had a great Thanksgiving. In the end, it's a great thing that we have Thanksgiving. We have so many of these holidays that, I don't personally, most of you are not involved in them. And Thanksgiving gives us that break in the midst of it. Because he had someone yesterday that said, so do you celebrate Thanksgiving? It was a guy that I was actually playing golf with for just a little while. And I said, of course. He said, well, I didn't know. He said, you don't do Christmas and Easter. And so I thought maybe you just didn't do all holidays. And it gave me a little bit of an opportunity to say just a little there. I didn't say much. But Thanksgiving, of course, I believe, had its roots in the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot. We see that through the Pilgrims. We see that through Columbus. We see a lot of things, a lot of Hebrew heritage that the United States has. And so I really feel that this is a time in which we've been kind of, the Father's given us a gift of being able to come together with family and celebrate this time. So, but in the end, we all know that it's an interesting time because there's just things you don't bring up if you want to get through the meal peacefully. All right, speaking of peaceful, this Torah portion, excuse me, my voice is still getting over this thing, whatever it is. I guess that, we used to call it the crud. Now there's all kinds of fancy names for it, but I'm just going to go with crud because that's kind of hangs on like that. This Torah portion, there's Torah portions that I turn to. Maybe you do the same thing, and it's like, yeah, there's such good stuff. And then there's others that are like, oh, I got to get through this one again. And I find that the reason some of these Torah portions are like that is because maybe there's more that's being said that sometimes it's not wanting to be dealt with. So it's like, well, just get me through this one and over to the good stuff. This one begins in Genesis chapter 32, verses 4 or 3, depending on your translation. I'm just going to go with the translation I have, David Stern, Complete Jewish Bible, has it listed as 4. So from this point on, I'm not going to give both of those. It says, Yaakov sent messengers ahead of him to Esau his brother toward the land of Seir, the country of Edom. The word sent here is that he stretched out his hand. The first time that this word is used is in Bereshit, in the garden, regarding the garden, that regarding the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It may be that Adam and Eve would stretch out their hand. And so this is not just he's sending these messengers, but these messengers are to be an extension of Jacob. And the message here, it needs to be asked. So what is the purpose of this sending these messengers? What is the message that is being sent out from Yaakov, from Jacob? Is it an opportunity for restoration, or is it something else? Well, I would love to give Jacob the grace here and say that he's just looking for an opportunity. Maybe this is a possibility that his brother is going to be peaceful. He is going to seek restoration of this damaged relationship, which, by the way, is not Jacob's fault. It's Esau's fault in the first place. This is where human nature, human thinking can become so convoluted, so crazy. It's what an old friend of mine used to say, stinking thinking. That here in the midst of this, that Jacob is in a way kind of taking on the guilt for all of this on himself. Well, find for me the verse. Find for me the account here that this was Jacob's fault. Was it Jacob's fault in the womb that his brother was trying to kill him by stomping on his head? Was it Jacob's fault that his brother did not make this stew a covenant meal, that he didn't care anything about it? Was it Jacob's fault that he had to step in as his brother in front of his father to receive the blessing? No, none of this is really the fault of Jacob. But when we take things onto ourselves and somehow, well, it was kind of my fault along the way. I had a situation that happened right after Charlie Kirk's murder, that a person that I at the time counted as a friend he said, well, that guy deserved it. Well, that ended up being quite the yelling match between the two of us. And I've gone over it in my mind many times and thought, I could have handled that better. Well, excuse me, why am I feeling that guilt? I still see this person on occasion from a distance normally. And I think, well, what could I do? Why am I doing that? Why is it that I'm taking on a certain amount of guilt for something that I did not begin in the first place? Do you have, is it just me? Or is there a family member that was at Thanksgiving that you're like, well, I try to, restore this, but wait a minute, in the end, it wasn't my fault to begin with. So who's supposed to do the act of restoration? I know that we are a minister of reconciliation. The scripture says that. And we should seek to restore. But I should not feel guilty when I'm not the one that began the fight. I should always be willing to end the fight and help in that fight. So in this one, is he looking for an opportunity for restoration? Well, the scripture does not allow that, actually, because it says in verse 21, for he said, I will appease him first with the present that goes ahead of me, then after that I will see him myself. The scripture is saying to us that he is trying to appease his brother. Now, the word here is kafar, and is used the first time in Genesis chapter 6, verse 14. It is when Noah took the pitch and covered the wood. So what is Jacob trying to do? He is trying to cover it over. Act like it never happened. Maybe if I just, act like things don't happen around me, then it'll be okay. Well, excuse me. When's the last time that actually worked out? It doesn't. In the end, things must be dealt with. Now, the important thing to understand is that everything that must be dealt with has a better timing to be dealt with. And that's, again, where our human nature gets in the way. Getting ahead of that timing, getting behind that timing. So for Jacob, it's just, well, if I can just cover this over, then it's going to go away. Well, it's not going to go away. The other thing that's not going to go away is the covenant. Is the verses here of, let's go down to chapter 32. Need to turn the page. And I'm going to let you read these on your own, please. I'm not going to read 10 verses here. But between chapter 32, verses 23 through 33, what is this? This is the birth of Israel. Okay, that simply put, these, if someone says, where was the nation of Israel born? Well, this is the solidifying of the covenant. through the man Jacob, who is now to be called Israel. We could look at this in a term that has been used by Christianity, and that's being born again. So Jacob is, in actuality, this is the time that he is born again, even in the midst of his issues, even in the midst of his trying to appease, to not stand up. And this is just such an amazing place of grace that the Father has such. I think there's many concepts of him that I don't understand, that I have tried to figure out for decades, literally. I think that in the end, I'm using those words in the end a lot, but there's two words that go together: grace and mercy. I just, for the life of me, I cannot figure out his grace, his mercy, and that goes to so many other things. Why is it that in the midst of what he's doing here, this is literally in the midst of the trial with his brother. It's coming up on the episode at Shechem with Dinah. His grace and mercy goes past that in order for his plans to come forth. Now, if you can explain that one to me, or to anybody else for that matter, you're doing a whole lot better than me. Because in the end, it goes back to this very simple but very complex thought. The Hebrew words that are translated why, lama and lima. Lama is, why did it happen? Lima is, for what purpose? His grace, his mercy goes past the very simplicity of a word in English called why, and it goes over into for what purpose. So for what purpose has he called you? For what purpose has he redeemed you? For many people that I've come in contact through the years, kind of feel like, God redeemed me and it's just for me. It's for nothing more than just so that I can, quote unquote, go to heaven. Just so that I can be with him in eternity. But they never see past that basic, simple, beautiful concept of redemption, of salvation, into it was for a greater reason, a greater purpose than just your life, than just my life. He redeems us to then bring forth something that is far greater than himself. Yes, Jacob becomes the nation of Israel in this. He is born again. Now, in this process is this wrestling with a messenger. And I've heard through the years so many different discussions on who this is that he is wrestling with. Of course, in Christianity, everything is Jesus, without ever thinking about the context and what's going on. That gets left over into Messianic, and it's all about Yeshua. Well, it is all about him, but who is this? Some say that this is Hasatan, Satan himself. Some say it's the spirit of Esau, which would be linked to. And I've heard, discussions through the years that have really been demeaning to people? We're not actually told. Okay, we are told that that he called the place the face of God, but does that mean that it was literally a messenger from Elohim? Well, I guess that you could say that the messenger was given the authority by Elohim, but who is it? Maybe, possibly, the question of who is it is not what we should be asking. There's numerous places in Scripture that are like this. The tree of life. Well, what kind of tree was it? Does it really matter? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or good connected to evil. What kind of tree was it? Well, does it really matter? The unauthorized fire of Aaron's sons. What was it? Does it really matter? Because in the end, it is that the Almighty sends what was needed. He uses what is needed at that time. And I mean, for all of us, look back over your life. There are times of financial issues. There may be some times of health issues. There's times of emotional difficulties or family struggles or whatever. You're having a problem on the job, a problem with a coworker, all of those things. Again, we can go back and try to figure out, well, the details of it, and then argue about the details, or ask ourselves, for what purpose is this difficulty? For what purpose is this that I am wrestling with? What is the Father trying to do in my life through this situation? Because maybe, just maybe, I haven't been listening in other ways. Now, in chapter 33, we read that this is the meeting between Jacob and Esau. And in verse 3, it says, then he himself passed on ahead of them and prostrated himself on the ground 7 times before approaching his brother. So he prostrates himself, which is a sign of humility, yes, but it's also a sign of you are superior to me. It is a sign of worship. See, what are we prostrating ourselves before? That's a question that needs to be asked at times. Now, he prostrates himself 7 times, not a coincidence that he did that 7 times, because 7 is the number of completion. So, what is he doing? Is he looking for a complete opportunity for restoration? Or is he completely appeasing, trying to completely appease his brother? Well, guess what? It doesn't work. Because as we read the verse, it says again in verse 3, Esau ran to meet him, or verse 4, hugged him, fell on his neck, and kissed him. Now, if we don't understand anything about Hebrew, that seems pretty good. But if you look at the Hebrew words, and this is taught a lot in rabbinic teaching, it is nasak, which is nun shin kof. And the root word here means to burn. Now, was he burning in love? No, it was hatred. And this is further taught because the center letter of that, which is the driving force of the word, In Hebrew, the center letter of a three-letter root is the driving force of the word. So his hatred was still burning inside of him. And it is taught that it was not Esau's desire to kiss his brother on the neck, but to sink his teeth into him, to kill him. It says the two of them wept. Now, again, there are different ways of looking at things, but what's the weeping about? They wept. Okay, but what kind of tears are they? Is it different kind of tears based upon the person? Is it tears that Jacob was always looking to restore? I think there's a level of that's here, personally, that for anyone who is redeemed, any one of us who has received the grace, the mercy of the Almighty, is it not our desire, the same desire that he says, that the scripture says that in the end, it is his will that all should be redeemed, that all should be saved? So is this on Jacob's side, is this a weeping over his yearning for redemption in Esau? I can see that. But on the other side, what are the tears that Esau is shedding? Is there any meaning to him at all? Is it just for a show? You know, tears can be so deceptive. When someone asks for forgiveness and they're shedding tears, okay, does the shedding of tears really mean anything? Or should it not be the life that is beyond the shedding of tears? Kathy and I were talking about someone that's on the news recently. I'm not going to mention a name. But I said, you know, every time I see this person, they've got the little Kleenex or the tissue, and it's the dabbing of the tear in the corner of their eye. I think those are called crocodile tears. I don't trust crocodile tears. Am I judging someone? No, I'm not passing. That's not my job to pass a final judgment. But it is my job to discern when it's affecting me, when it's affecting the family of Yah, then I want to discern. So just because someone has a little tear in the side of their eye does not really mean much. Watch what they do after that. I'm going to leave that one right there, okay? Moving on is verses 12 through 15. Esau said, "Let's break camp and get going. I'll go first." Yaakov said to him, "My Lord knows the children are small, and the sheep and cattle suckling their young concern me, because if they overdrive them even one day, all the flocks will die. Indeed, please let my Lord go on ahead of his servant, and I will travel more slowly at the pace of the cattle ahead of me, or the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." Esau replied, "Then let me leave with you some of the people I have with me," and it goes on from there. And there's no need for you to do that. And Yaakov went on to Sukkot, the place of dwelling. Now, yes, he went on to Sukkot, but let's go into this about his journey and where he should be going. First of all, these verses can simply be put this way. He's pushing the battle forward. Jacob, Yaakov, is pushing the battle forward. He is not taking care of it. Now, go back just a few verses, one chapter back, and this born-again experience that Jacob is now known as Israel. And here's a tip that most of you probably know this, but I'm just going to, as a reminder, as we read from this point, from chapter 32 on, literally through Revelation, not always, but most of the time. Most of the time that I've seen this, I've seen some areas that it's like, well, I'm not really sure. But most of the time, when the name Jacob is used for this man, after chapter 32, he is thinking from an earthly realm. He's thinking with an earthly mind, with we could say, a carnal mind. But when the name Israel is attached to him, and this is prevalent at the end of Genesis, I'll go back to this again when we get to those words spoken over the 12 boys, because it becomes very, very apparent there. When the name Israel is used over him, he is thinking from a heavenly realm. So we could say it like this: when Jacob is used, he is speaking. He is thinking from man's perspective. When Israel is used, he's thinking from Yah's perspective. We should ask ourselves that question literally all the time. What perspective am I speaking from? What perspective am I thinking from? So in this, again, timing, I got it, but he's pushing the battle forward. And I dare say that the battle is still being pushed forward today. What have we seen for the last 2 years with after October 7th of 2023? Well, that was just a pushing for. That was a continuation of the battle that is here in Genesis chapter 33. Today, what do we see? A ceasefire. How's it working? Well, I have to tell you, it's given the people of Israel a much needed break. But has it come to an end? No, it's still being pushed forward. Now with Jacob, again, this is the end of chapter 33, having traveled from Paddan Aram, Yaakov, Jacob, arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and set up camp near the city. What's here? Well, this is where Abraham came. This is the place that Abraham would have been able to see from Elon Moreh. Genesis chapter 12. When Abram is standing there and he's told, I will give you this land, then he looks around and he looks into the town that would have been there in that day, a very small town probably, of Shechem. Well, in order for Jacob to come back into the land, what's he doing? He's retracing the steps of his grandfather. Retracing them almost exact. Anything wrong with that? No. But let's consider another aspect here. It says that he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and set up camp near the city. Why? Why did he set up camp? Why didn't he continue moving on? Now, was it he set up camp for the night? Doesn't appear so, because the next chapter, chapter 34, is one time Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Yaakov, went out to visit the local girls, and she was raped. So, does that just happen overnight? Let's set up camp for the night. Okay, everybody get some rest. The next morning we're out of here because I have a covenant promise that I made to the Almighty. But instead, he decides, we need a little time here. It was enough time that his daughter from Leah felt comfortable in going into the city, felt comfortable in visiting the local girls. Now, in the midst of this, she gets raped. And we do see we go back a verse up here in verse 19, from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of silver the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent. Okay. He bought that land. With his what? This is the first record of a transaction, a financial transaction that is made in the land of Canaan, the land of Israel. Where was that transaction supposed to be? What was his first transaction supposed to be? And where was that transaction supposed to be? If you will go with me, go back a few chapters, if you will go with me, provide for me food and clothing, then I will return to here and I will give you a tenth of all that I have. Jacob made a promise, an oath, a covenant oath, that when you return me here, when you bring me back, this is what I will do. But instead of making that oath a priority, what does he do? Well, I'm back in the land, and I guess we could I'm going to buy a little piece of land here and set up camp for a little while, and well, I'll get to Beit El. I'll get there eventually, and I'll pay that. I'll give that tenth to whoever I need to give it to. His oath was not a priority, and because of that, his daughter was raped. His daughter was humiliated. Why is this? Again, I'm not trying to be totally judgmental toward Jacob. I think the guy did some really great things. And again, once, there's Torah portions that, as I started with, there's Torah portions that you really don't want to get into because they kind of make you look at yourself a little bit more than others. And those are typically the ones that none of us really want to look at, because I'd rather get to the ones that just have the good stuff in them. Well, it's the ones like this that we really need to take a very close, honest look at. And again, but I'm not the one that wrote this. And who is he talking about? When Yaakov heard that he had defiled his daughter, Shechem went out to Yaakov to speak to him. In the end, it is Shimon and Levi who, again, was it the right thing to do? Probably. Was it the right way to do it? Well, it doesn't appear so. But here's this is the one that gets me in this Torah portion every time. Yaakov said to Shimon and Levi, "You have caused me trouble by making me stink in the opinion of the local inhabitants, the Canaanite and the Perizzite." What? Excuse me? Your daughter has been raped, possibly because of your lack of priority, and you're concerned about your own image here? I think somebody needs to talk to him a little bit. We're not talking about his image that's been ruined. We're talking about his daughter's image. It says, "Since I don't have many people, they'll align themselves against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household." You know, again, I come to this Torah portion is one that I don't really like. Why? Because I've got this monitor in front of me. In fact, there's a small one and a large one that I don't like to look at the large one specifically. It's like your mirror in the morning. You look at it and it just shows the truth all the time, doesn't it? And here is this account of this man who is putting his own self ahead of many things, including the covenant of Yah. I mean, Shimon and Levi look at their father and say this, "Should we let our sister be treated like a whore?" He doesn't answer. He's silent. There's nothing here guys, let me explain to you something. No, he just leaves it there. But again, because of his grace, because of his mercy, that is far beyond our understanding, Yah said to Yaakov, chapter 35, "Get up, go up to Beit El and live there. Make an altar to Elohim who appeared to you when you fled Esau your brother." Then Yaakov said to his household and the others with him, "Get rid of the foreign gods that you have with you, purify yourselves, and put on fresh clothes. We're going to move on and go up to Beit El. There I will build an altar to Elohim, who answered me when I was in such distress and stayed with me wherever I went." Grace, mercy. The Father's plan is going forth. And in the end, he's using fallible people. He's using imperfect people to bring forth a perfect work. I can't figure him out. And it's probably a good thing. Well, there is something here that Jacob does. That it says that he said to those in the camp, those that were with him, "Put away your foreign gods." Your foreign gods. Well, where did that come from? It's obvious we know one person that has some foreign gods, some idols with them. But it appears that there were, like the nursemaid, Rivka's nurse. Did she also bring some foreign gods, some idols, some false gods with her? Well, if we continue the story, it says in verse 8, "Then Devorah, Rivka's nurse, died. She was buried below Beit El under the oak, which was given the name Oak of Weeping." Is this a hint? Who is the closest associated with Rivka? Her servant, her nurse, the one that would be taking care of everything. This would be, we don't have this kind of a concept really in, well, we do in certain places. You look at the president, he has somebody that's there with him all the time. Many executives have somebody there all the time. They take care of every little detail. They know the person as well, or sometimes even better than they know themselves. Okay? And so Rivka is also very close to her nurse, Devorah. And Devorah dies. Why is this? Is this connected with get rid of your foreign gods? And the message is from Yaakov, who speaks to the whole camp, but he knows, going back a number of chapters, he knows that his wife, Rivka, stole the foreign gods from her father, Laban. Again, going back to that Evan, okay, the true revelation of Messiah, and a false revelation, Laban. This all ties together here. So he knows that she still has these. Instead of confronting his wife, he makes a blanket statement. Why? Is it because he's afraid of his wife? Is it because he is afraid of her manipulation to him? That she has used his love for her and has manipulated him? I'm just throwing out a lot of different things here. Well, we see that Rivka's nurse dies, which could have been a direct message to Rivka that you need to get rid of these. This is the Father's intervention in her life to get her to put away these false gods. Well, in verses 10 through 15, we read the account of him putting up this standing stone. All right, the standing stone, which has been, I will put with a stone pillar. So this is the same place he's come back to now. He has fulfilled his vow. So the death, the rape of Dinah caused him to awaken to the fact that I have not fulfilled my oath. So he makes that oath a priority. He goes back to the place of the revelation, the Evan, the Aleph, the Beit, the Nun, a revelation of Messiah. He goes back to that place, revisits that place, gets his priority in line, pours out a drink offering on that, and then, when they traveled on from Beit El, while there was still some distance before arriving in Ephrat, Rachel went into labor, and she had great difficulty. Now, we go on, and it says, but she died in childbirth. As she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, son of my grief. But his father called him Benjamin, son of my right hand, son of the south. Now, this is Benjamin is the only one of the boys that are named by Jacob, their father. The rest were named by the women, by our foremothers. So Rivka names him Ben-Oni. So the root word is idolatry. Go onto Blue Letter Bible or whatever you use. Go to the word Oni, Ben-Oni, and the word Ben, of course, means son. Oni, the root of this is idolatry. Rivka was given a warning from her husband. Put away your false gods. Her nursemaid died. Put away your false gods, because they bring forth false life. And what does she do? She refuses. See, his grace, the Father's grace and mercy has a limit. Well, his grace it's all everlasting. It has limits. There's a place that you and I can push it to the end. Does this affect our redemption, our salvation? Maybe not, but it affects our life and causes death. Sometimes in a physical sense, sometimes in, we all know of people that, and this is not an age related, but they're kind of like a walking corpse. They've already died. Why? Because they refused the warnings over and over and over again. The warnings to put those things away. So the revelation here is of a false God, a false revelation, a false Messiah, and a true Messiah. The name Oni, spelled very similar to Evan. One's about a false God. One's about a true God. Here's my question at the end. Where is my life coming from? Where is your life? What do you look at for life? What do you go to for life? Is what we're receiving our life from a true revelation or a false revelation? I guess that's a great message as we begin this month of December. So many people will receive a life from a false revelation, I'll go ahead and say it, called Christmas. Right now, the stores are full, people are excited, people are running around trying to buy presents and all of these things, and we got commercials with a bow on top of a car, of a $100,000 car, and children people will overspend. They will give out of guilt, all kinds of things that are happening right now. But on this time here, what is it? December 2nd, from Black Friday, the season. There's all kinds of false joy. But what happens? And maybe you're like, well, I don't want to get involved, but I really do miss that kind of joy. Sin always reminds you of the good and never of the bad. Remember back into the days when we celebrated December 25th? Remember how out of all that joy, as soon as you got those packages unwrapped, there was a depression that set in, because the revelation you knew all the time was false. And now it became a reality of how false it was. Let us in this day let us choose the true revelation of Messiah, not a false one. Shabbat Shalom. Shavua Tov. Have a blessed, prosperous week. Bezrat Hashem, God willing. See you again next week. And until then, be strong.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha Shalom.